Washington's depth chart is a lot stronger than you think.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's the site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Lars, we got a really fun show coming up for all the everydayers, where we've gotten a whole bunch of questions about it from our insiders, from the YouTube comments, from everybody. We really appreciate everyone reaching out, where they want to know what the depth chart's going to look like this year. The everydayers want to know. And after 2 weeks of practice, it has been Jedd Fisch has shut down practice, which is a totally normal thing to do for the remainder of fall camp leading up to the start of the season on August 31st against Weber State. And we're going to get a depth chart officially when we go see him on Monday for his first press conference of the season. But we love to make predictions on the show, so we're going to dive into it. And the best way to start is along the offensive line. So Lars, what are you, because we know what we're going to be getting into, quarterback, running back, we'll get there. But along the offensive line, Lars, on the very first play against Weber State, who are the top five going to be?
So as much as I begrudgingly think this, I think it's the exact same five that that we saw on Saturday.
Okay.
Because it's been for the
most
part
out for the everydayers, just so we.
I know, but I'm just saying I'm leading
Yeah.
it because it's the most consistent line we've seen. It's the line that, if anything, against especially Weber State, to your point, the first line, who do you want to get the first crack to? Sewane Fasolo at left tackle,
Okay.
Guard Memolar at left guard, D'Angelo Titilihi at center, Enoch Mahi at right guard, and without question, one of the two no questions on this line is Drew Azzopardi at right tackle. So that to me would be where I would start. But I do think Maximus McCree will get some time, and there's some other guys who will get some time. But I think that's the safest line to bet on week one.
So I certainly agree with you, and I'll list out what we both believe is going to be the second string offensive line behind it, just so we get everything in there. Maximus McCree at left tackle, Pocky Finau at left guard. I've got Landon Hatchett at center, Zach Henning at right guard, and Kaylee Tafai at right tackle. That's what it feels like we're going to see as of right now, from what we've seen at practice, from just the combinations we've seen, from who's in front of them, and that this is still the biggest question mark on this team by far. And the more I look at this, the more I say there's certainly potential there. I wrote an article over on Huskies Wire that all the everydayers need to go check out, where I talked about guys that are going to be the biggest key to the season for Washington. And in one of the list, it's just Sewane Fasolo or Maximus McCree, because it's left tackle. That's going to be arguably the biggest key to the season for me as a whole, where the more you look at that position, whether it is Sewane or whether it is Max, or whether it's a timeshare, whatever it looks like, whoever is there is, in my opinion, the most important piece, where you can make everything else work, where we know what guard can do on the left side. We know D'Angelo or Landon are both going to be pretty solid at center. Enoch's got a lot of experience, and in between those, between him and or whoever's at center and Drew Azzopardi at right tackle, he's going to be able to contribute and be able to do enough. The question is, in one-on-one pass protection, is Sewane Fasolo, is Maximus McCree going to be able to hold up when Washington has to travel to Penn State and take on Abdul Carter? Is that going to happen? Those are things that I really wonder about with this team right now.
Same, although to be fair, in that specific example, I'm not sure many people are going to be able to slow him down.
Yeah,
but
fair.
but the point still stands, because, and that's the thing when we talk about what we saw from the left tackle position in training camp. Neither one necessarily guaranteed themselves a starting spot, in the sense that I don't think Max way outclassed Sewane, and at the same point, I don't think Sewane way outclassed Max in terms of how they were getting and how they're performing, because they both had their struggles. They both, I remember, I think there was a couple of times in the second scrimmage where I literally wrote down clean pocket, and I looked, and I don't know if it was to you or to somebody else, and I was like, I can count the number of truly clean pockets on one hand here. So, on some level, you have to gauge how much of it is the defense, how much of it is the offensive line. And so I think for that reason, that's why just kind of the rotation that they've been going through, it just seems like that's the most confident group to go with.
Right. And one thing, before we move on from the offensive line here, is the Landon Hatchett debate, where if D'Angelo is starting week 1, that's not going to be a surprise. But if Landon is starting week 1, that I don't feel that's going to be a surprise to either of us as well. In just terms of other times when we've seen him with the first team, working with those other 4 guys. So it's just a matter of how does the coaching staff feel about him starting in the first week. And that's going to be its own question. But from what we've seen, I know we both feel confident enough in D'Angelo to do that starting job if he is the one that's called on. So Lars, with that being said, let's stay on the line of scrimmage and let's move over to tight end, where it seems pretty cut and dry. You got Quentin Moore as the starter. You got Khmori House as the backup. And we're probably going to see some Decker DeGraff as well.
Yeah, I think honestly, to your point, it's the or. It's probably Quentin Moore or Khmori House and then Decker DeGraff. Because the way that Quentin Moore, and that's no slight to Moore or even Latu in that regard, but given how the tight end role in this offense, that seems more or less like it's an or. Like, hey, are we doing a run play or a pass play? And both they can both be in on either one. But obviously, Quentin a little bit more advanced in pass blocking, Khmori a little bit more polished as a catcher. So I think there's probably the most easily guaranteed or on this offensive depth chart.
I couldn't agree with you more, where it certainly feels like, more of a situational thing, which we're going to see a lot of on defense, where I know we both got a pretty solidified group of starters at this point, but it could vary on the week. So with that being said, let's jump over to receiver, where it feels like there might be a few more questions. You want to list off your 2 deeps, and then I've got mine written down right here. Let's see, how different it might be.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the 3 horsemen at the top, Giles Jackson, Denzel Boston, Jeremiah Hunter, your starting trio. That's without a question. The guys behind them, I'm torn between Audric and Rashid. So in a way, I could almost see the depth chart as that second backup saying or, Rashid Williams or. Sure. And I also think Kevin Green will be in that 2 deep behind Giles Jackson in the slot. And then that third one, to me, I want to put Keith Reynolds in there. I just don't know where he fits. Because again, him and Kevin Green are the 2 same guys in a way. So right. That could also be another or as well. And given you have 3 positions, you could just put, one behind Denzel, there's going to be some manipulation at this point.
So we both had an or in here, which I like, but they're in different spots. Where right now, when I look at this, when I look at receiver, yeah, the 3 starters are solidified. We don't need to spend a lot of time. The Everydayers have heard us talk about how much we love all 3 of these starters and how good we think they can be this season. But when I look at this group of backups, I think Rashid Williams is solidified from everything, especially that we saw from him in the spring. So if he's healthy, certainly solidified there. I think Audric has solidified himself. I don't think he deserves an or at this point. I think that he's solidified himself into one of those backup roles where when we talked to Kevin Cummings, he talked about him being a super polished guy. We saw him make some mistakes that are, just true freshman mistakes. And to quote Kevin Cummings, sometimes he's a disaster, sometimes he's incredible. Or that's every true freshman. That's certainly not limited to one player. I have an or at that 3rd spot where I think it's Kevin Green or Keith Reynolds. I think we're going to see both. I do. I think that Damon Williams especially developed some nice chemistry with both those guys. I think they both made a fair amount of plays that would warrant earning that spot for themselves. But I think that right now, depending on a couple of things, that's going to be the or. And Lars, we still got quarterbacks and running backs to get to. Right after a message from our friends over at Game Time, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier, which I love because I'm certainly going to be going to some baseball games over the next couple of months as the season starts to wind down. And the best way to do it is I want to find a super deal on Game Time. I'd like to go see the Mariners beat the Yankees, because who doesn't love watching the Yankees lose in this town or really anywhere in this country outside of New York. And I'm certainly going to be finding those tickets on Game Time with Game Time Picks, where the curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. We got the all-in pricing, where if you toggle this feature, if you turn it on, you get to see your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, which I love. I also love the seat views. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and you can take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets, MLB tickets, any kind of tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And we've also got a message from our good friends over at FanDuel, because you've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot, because they are America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game, which is just great news for people like me, because I am a football junkie in every sense of the word, and I just love getting as much football in as I possibly can every single Sunday. It's my favorite thing. I love it so much. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. And just a quick reminder to continue, go check out Bobby Witt's odds for AL MVP over on FanDuel. He still looks like he is the best player in the American League. Lars, it's pretty cut and dry here at quarterback. You got Will Rogers, you got Damon Williams. Don't think there are going to be any surprises there. But as we did get a chance to talk to Jedd Fisch on Saturday a little bit about switching up quarterbacks and if there are going to be any potential packages there, and he gave us a fantastic answer where he said, why am I going to share that information with you guys? And obviously in a very respectful way. Why am I going to tip my hand there? But that could be a lot of fun to see, and that's something we have discussed on this program.
I was gonna say, I remember asking Jedd that at media day, and he gave again the other side of that stock answer, which is, I don't anticipate, the starter will be the starter. I don't want, because again, what actual coach, if you think about it, would want to say, hey, we're every other drive we're going to alternate quarterbacks. This isn't practice. This is a game. Right. In practice, you can alternate drives as much as you want. And in a way, honestly, look at how that went in fall camp, where we would see, Damon, then Will, then Damon, then granted with 2 different units. So I'm not saying it's like the same offense and just switching out quarterbacks, but it wasn't, in both scrimmages, the passes were there early on, but it wasn't like they were scoring touchdowns after touchdowns after touchdowns on all those drives. It took them a little bit to get going. And that's kind of why you don't do the kind of yo-yo effect of the quarterback where, hey, Will, you're the guy. Oh, geez, wow, Will's kind of struggling today. Or, actually, Will's doing good. Let's see how Damon goes. Let's see let's simulate an injury for Will. Will, you're not hurt, but come out. We're going to put Damon in. We want to see how he reacts to this. That's not the way things go here. But I do think, again, as I've said, and I still plant that flag, I think there will be a route that Damon finds those packages. Jedd's just not going to say it. He's going to show it, and then he's going to show it, and then I'm going to ask, okay, there's the package that I thought I was going to see. What makes you like that package?
Right. That's the biggest thing at quarterback. Where at running back, there's a little bit of a different discussion here. Top 2, also very cut and dry. It's Jonah Coleman and it's Cameron Davis. I don't think this is going to happen, but if you saw an or next to them, the dreaded college football or is Jonah Coleman or Cameron Davis, again, don't think it's going to happen, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if it does. Behind those 2 guys, I feel that it's Adam Mohammed and then the field behind him, where there's some veterans in the room like Daniel Ngannou, like Sam Adams, but it's the way we've seen Adam Mohammed perform throughout fall camp, and even when he was here in the spring, I feel that he is the number 3 running back on this team.
You're 100% right, but in the context of this whole Jedd operation, it's going to be an or. It's going to be Cameron Davis. Sorry, we'll pause. No, not at the top. Not at the top. So it's going to be Jonah Coleman 1, Cameron Davis 2, and then or
I don't
Adam
think
Mohammed,
that's going to happen.
Or because
that's the complete or
going down those. No, because Jonah's the 1, Cam's the 2. There's no or there. 1, 2, and then it goes or 3, or 4, or 5 because you haven't got a Sam Adams and Adam Mohammed. And to me, especially the way Scotty Graham talked about Adam Mohammed, but Daniel Ngannou, like there's a route as long as he's healthy for him to be on the team or for him to have a role in this team. And similar to Sam Adams, where we saw him have a decent, fall camp, all things considered, when he got reps, and this is without question the most action Sam Adams has seen in his time at Washington in the fall camp. So as long as he can stay healthy into the season, And given that Scotty Graham mentioned that him and his Sam Adams' dad, former Baltimore Ravens nose tackle, all that, got drafted in the same class when they both went to the NFL, there's clearly a relationship there. So I would be very surprised if Sam doesn't have a role equally on this team. It's just a matter of who's healthy, who's available. But again, to your point, Adam's going to be that first guy listed probably, but in terms of those last three, but there's definitely going to be an or on the back end of that.
I see what you're saying. I don't know if we're going to see that much of a traffic jam per se at the position, but I certainly like your thought process and see where you're coming from. Let's switch sides here. Let's get to the defense, where as of right now, this is what I think the starting four is going to be along the defensive line. I think it's going to be Deshaun Lynch, Sebastian Valdez, Jacob Bandis, and Zach Durfee. Where behind them, it's going to get a little dicey. A lot of it's going to have to do with the health of Javon Parker. As we've said before on this show, we haven't seen him practice this fall. It looks like he's still just working his way back from a minor injury, but it looks like he's getting back into the swing of things and is starting to do a little bit more contact work, which is really good to see because he adds a lot of depth there. But Lars, before we really dive into the D-line here, what do you think the second string is going to be behind those guys?
So that I think it's almost somewhat rather easy, but it also depends on because there's so much position versatility. So it'd be Isaiah Ward behind Durfee because that's been clear as day. I mean, when Durfee was out, Isaiah Ward was that guy. The question so let me look at Sagapolu along the interior, that one interior spot. I'm going to put Bryce Butler at that second interior spot.
I like that. I do that too.
And I don't want to put Voy at that other edge spot because I think in a way, like that's where I'm really, really torn here because there's so many different or it's Lance Holtzclaw. That's the other side of this equation where there's so many other guys that you can go. It's like there's gonna be an or at one of those spots. I think because there's so many bodies at that position, you can't just have two guys at each position. Like that just doesn't. And by the way, I want to say this: even if we do have a depth chart that says just two across the board, there's going to be at least two whole other rows behind those guys of guys getting actual legit game reps week in and week out.
So I know you didn't do this on purpose, but this just plays into your point. If there's one, I'm just going to call it the traffic jam on the roster. It's certainly going to be at that edge spot because it could be Voight Tanufi. It could be Jacob Lane, who we've talked about getting run with the first team. It could be Jaden Wayne, who we've seen have some really nice reps. Like there are so many players that fit into that mold of, it could be this guy or it could be that guy. Where I think we're going to see Voight more on the interior. He's still, listed as an edge. We're still going to see him out there, but I think that's the primary role where we're going to see Voight in with 3 down linemen, where he's going to be lined up in the 4-eye and doing a lot of work out of that particular spot. But that's just the problem. I mean, it's not a problem because, when we talked about in the beginning, where the depth on this roster really shows is at these positions. Is it untested? Yes. But have we also seen that it can be, very promising if it lives up to its ceiling? Also, yes. And just the more I look at this roster, the more I feel really good about just the majority of the positions there, where I still want to see it really proven on both the defensive and the offensive line, where the defensive line has given us more reason for optimism because we've seen this defensive line, whether it be at one place or another, actually, show a little bit more. And I don't mean that in terms of knocking the offensive line. I just mean in terms of, Sebastian Valdez has Montana State experience. Where is that everything? No, but is it something? Yes. We saw Isaiah Ward and Russell Davis get their time at Arizona. We've seen Voy, play a whole bunch of different roles in this defense. We've seen Javon Parker for a couple of years, and Jaden Wayne got some reps in at Miami, and Deshaun Lynch at Sac State, same thing, where it's not the same level of experience of, Big Ten play, but they've shown us in their time of working across from this offensive line that there are reasons to be excited and that the depth is going to be there come this fall. But at the same point, that's where I have questions in terms of just where the snap count is going to be for each of these guys come, let's just say after week 3.
Yeah, I mean, I truly don't think I hear your point. I just don't think like the snap count. It's just a matter of perspective. Like whichever one ends up, because that's also going to play a part to what type of offense you're going against. But I'm glad you mentioned all that because when you think about Jaden Wayne, he's got game experience. Kaylee Tafai, when he goes against him at right tackle, no game experience. Max McCree, Max McCree hasn't played in over 18 months. I'm not surprised that Zach Durfee and a few other guys, had their way every now and then with him. And same thing with Sewanee. And so that also is kind of the important context with the offensive line and the defensive line. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, because it's not like, wow, Washington got these guys on the offensive line, but they can't play. It's like, no, they haven't A, played together, and B, some of these guys literally straight up haven't played. So like, what do you expect? Like, that's not a surprise.
Exactly. And that's where, where I know we've seen a couple of messages like, oh, are you guys overhyping the D-line? It's no, this is what it looks like. It looks really good. Like that's what we've seen. We're only just reporting what we've seen with our own two eyes, which, we both enjoy and we've seen a lot of. And with that being said, we still got to get to the back seven of this defense where there's a lot of reason to be excited for. Right after a message from our friends over at Ibotta. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer, but don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials, because Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps gives you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join the over 15 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners just $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Lars, linebacker, just like quarterback and running back, feels pretty cut and dry. We talked about it on yesterday's show where it's Carson Bruener, Alfonso Tupatal at the top. It's Drew Fowler and Brian Parham behind them. Then it's probably Khmori House, where we're probably not going to see Khmori listed on the depth chart. If he does, it's going to be that or with one of those guys. But it feels like that's the rotation where Devin Bryant was still recovering from an injury in the spring, and it feels like they're letting them get up to speed. And we look at Hayden Moore. That's a guy with, just like Devin, with 4 years of eligibility remaining, and they're probably going to utilize this as kind of a year of learning for him and feel more comfortable with him stepping into a role in 2025. Did I miss anything there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Anthony Ward is, again, probably will see some snaps.
He'll be in the rotation as
well. We'll see some snaps, but again, I don't think it's cracked at quote unquote two deeps if you're really just asking for two guys at each position. But he'll be. He's honestly kind of been more of a special teams guy at Arizona anyway, so that tracks. So yeah, I don't think there's any question. I mean, I could see, because again, I could see maybe if Khmori is listed, it would have to be an or, because you can't list him and take out Parham or Fowler. Like, that would just be too disrespectful as two seniors doing it. That's no slight to Khmori, but I think that's an example of, for the everydayers, if you don't see a guy on the depth chart, doesn't mean he's not going to play or even have significant reps. Like, I could see Khmori having like the most reps of any of those reserve guys behind Carson and Alfonso in the opener, just because of that. Because if you get ahead early, they're going to play a lot of young guys if they can get up early, just so they can get those guys experience. Say, hey, what does it look like when these guys actually get on the field? Because we love it in practice, but we need to see some game tape.
Let's get into, honestly, the one I had the most trouble with. That's cornerback, where I want to hear who you have as your, let's list the starters right off the top. It'll be Ephesians Prasak on one side, feels like Elijah Jackson on the other, and Jordan Shaw in the slot. That's kind of where I am as of right now. I feel that Elijah Jackson's rest day, where Thaddeus Dixon is going to play a lot. If there's an or there, I'm not going to be surprised. But with Elijah's rest day during the scrimmage, it felt like they're trying to keep him healthy and are preparing for him to start week one. I could be wrong, but that's how it feels to me right now. Where I had a lot of trouble is with the other two second string spots. So I'd love to hear just where you are in the depth chart, and then we can just kind of go back and forth there.
So I don't necessarily disagree. I have been the biggest proponent, and that's no disrespect to Thad, because I'm talked to him when he committed, all that. Great, both guys, great guys. But to me, I think the way this defense sets up and John Richardson's style with being, physical and all that, not that Elijah's not, but we seen, again, to be fair, we can't really talk about it as much, but like let me put it this way. We've seen more of Thad than we have of Elijah with Prysock on the other side. And that's not to, we've also seen Elijah still be with that first team, but not necessarily at a true corner spot. So part of me wonders, okay, to your point about the back seven or the back five, could Elijah, and Thad both play at the same time, depending on how they want to make those make that look?
Definitely.
I think they're certainly going to play, but they're both going to play absolutely as long as they're both healthy. I just would not be surprised if it's an Orr and Thad gets the first snaps, but I also equally wouldn't be surprised if Jackson gets the first snaps. I'm surprisingly taking your agenda and going with Thad over Elijah here, because I mean, no disrespect.
Everybody comes around.
But when you said that, I was like, I fully expected you to pick Thaddeus on that one. So that was kind of cool to see you go the other way with that.
No, I'm glad we come full circle. But what I really want to hear from you are those other spots where I think you and I both expect Dyson McCutcheon to be behind Jordan Shaw at this point in time. But that last spot behind Ephesians Prysock, because somebody's going to be listed there in the depth chart. Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, see, you have Curly Reed, you have Darren Barkins, you have
Leroy Bryant.
Well, I'm trying to not count him just because since we didn't see him in the second scrimmage and we don't know if he's going to be available, I just don't want to be fair and transparent. Again, actually, you know what? Let me answer it that way. When healthy, Leroy Bryant's that second corner.
Yeah, that's. This is where we ran into our problem. Yeah,
and so I would say probably one of Curly, Leroy. I think Darren Barkins has to get some run if he's healthy because, again, this is why I mentioned, I don't remember which day it was specifically, but when we were talking about biggest concerns, this is why I said cornerback, because the depth isn't necessarily terrible long-term, but you look at the depth, aside from Dyson this season, and that's why we saw Justin Harrington also kind of slide down in some of that little bit of nickel third linebacker spot at times in fall camp, same with a little bit with Broussard, but more so with Harrington. Where, okay, you can but we didn't see Dyson truly kick out in that result. So to me, I mean, I would probably just say Leroy, just with the caveat that if he's healthy, but there's two other guys who are probably also going to have a fair shot as well.
You can't forget Caleb Presley either, where that's a guy who we've seen him get a lot of run with the second team as well. So there are a lot of options. And I get, it's like we say on the show all the time. I know you're not doing that on purpose, but that's where we ran into what's that going to look like, where there's a lot of different ways that you can figure it out, that you can take it, where Caleb's got a lot of run with the second team. We've seen Curly in there. We've seen Rashawn Clark at corner with the second team, a decent amount too, where it seems like they want to find a way to get that guy on the field. So it's curious. Safety feels a little more cut and dry, but it's just in the way we talked about it all offseason. Where right now, this is my full depth chart. I've got Cameron Fabiculanen and Cam Broussard as starters. I've got Mikel Esteen behind him, and I've got Justin Harrington behind him. And then, we can get into the discussion about where does Tristan Dunn and Peyton Waters fit in this discussion, where it feels like, they like Raheem Wright. We've seen a lot of him actually in that nickel role a little bit more often. We've seen Paul Menke back there, but I feel like those top four guys are going to see a lot of run this season. And then behind them, it's just kind of going to be, okay, we're going to fill a gap here for a couple plays. We're going to fill a gap there for a couple plays, sort of thing.
Yeah, and also the position versatility, like I mentioned with Elijah, potentially, like Elijah could slide over because we saw that at times in camp. And you mentioned Tristan Dunn and the rest of it. So, yeah, I think I would concur on all four of those because to me, obviously Peyton's going to play, but I don't necessarily think you can put him above any of those four guys. And that's no disrespect to Peyton. I just don't think, given those guys' experience, literally seniority-wise, and in Cam Pap's case being on the roster, and Mikel, that you can't take out one of those for a true freshman. But I do think Peyton's going to have a significant amount of play. So I'm okay with that tandem, honestly, because there's enough depth at that position. Granted, a lot of it is untested when the further down the depth chart you get. But there's plenty of bodies that have the potential to, hold down that either one of those safety spots if need be for an injury. But that's why you have two solid transfers coming in to pair with Cam and Mikel, because I remember we talked back in the spring where it's like, how do you feel if those two guys are your starting safeties? And it's like, it's not terrible, right? You can pull that off, but you want to get some, kind of additional, veteran reinforcements. And so that's why you go out and get Broussard and Harrington, knowing that you're going to have one starter, one rotational guy, and just let them honestly play it out, because I think that's the one thing Jedd made clear. There's going to be a depth chart, but there's always going to be room for change and everything. I think he actually said verbatim, we don't have a set 11 on either side of the ball. And I'm like, okay, that's the coach speaking there, but there's actually some truth to it.
Yeah, it's the competition thing that he's talked about for so long. It's that we're always going to be looking for the best players, just like we said yesterday when we were talking about Landon versus D'Angelo, where it's going to be that same thing every single time. It's just who are the best 11. We're always going to be looking for that. And Lars, I feel like that's a great place for us to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support, and thank you for making Locked On Huskies your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast, from NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors. Our guy, Spencer McLaughlin, gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also go check out our Locked On Huskies Insider program, where we've got so much fun stuff. We're dropping recruiting rumors over there. We're dropping the ability to chat with us one-on-one about your thoughts on the depth chart, the season, any questions that you might have for us. We're always willing to answer those and go back and forth, get to know you a little bit better. We had a really fun 40-minute Locked On Huskies Insider Q&A that you can only have access to if you subscribe to it, where you get a free 2-week trial. You can check it out, see if you like it. After that, it's just $4.99 a month, and we're doing everything in our power to make sure that it is the best possible bang for your buck. And if you go check it out, we really would appreciate it and really hope you enjoy it. With that being said, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click the little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on